Hello, today we're going to be working on the first violin part for Goin to Boston, arranged by Carrie Lane Grussell. This is an Appalachian folk song and it is in a fiddle tradition. So we're going to be trying to play in a fiddle style, which means that you may use your open E string if that's the most convenient. You don't have to try and avoid open E strings at all costs in fiddle music. And we are going to be putting some separation between the eighth notes in this one. So first of all, let's go ahead and look at the key signature. It is in the key of D major, so you have F sharp and C sharp. So the first important thing to be thinking about before you learn a new piece of music is what are your finger patterns. In this case, we have a 2-3 finger pattern. So with a half step between F sharp and G on the D string. Also on the A string, C sharp and D, that is where your half step is. So we call that high second finger. And then on the E string, your half step is between F sharp and G, first and second finger. So we call that a 1-2 finger pattern, and that is low second finger. I don't see any notes on the G string in the first violin part, so we won't worry about our finger pattern on the G string. However, if we did have those notes, just know that it would be high third finger for C sharp. Notice how if you look through it, there is a key change at 25. You're moving into the key of C major, so all natural there, but only for 4 measures, and then you're back into D major. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Looking through the rhythms of this one, you do see there are a lot of 16th notes, but in most cases just a group of 4 16th notes on a bow staying on the same note. So you just need to make sure that you're ready to move the bow a little bit faster. Now the printed tempo for this one is 104 beats per minute for the quarter note. The tempo in smart music is actually 107, which is slightly faster than the printed tempo. And if you are practicing with smart music, you will notice if you change the tempo at all, it's going to cause some distortion of the sound. So you can bump the tempo up or down, but the sound quality is going to suffer. So my recommendation is to start working on this one at about 80 beats per minute, and maybe use a metronome for the tempo and this video. And then when you're ready to play the whole thing up to 80, gradually work the tempo up, and then when you are ready to play it up to tempo, up to 107, then play it with smart music. So let's get started. Again, we're going to be working at a tempo of 80 beats per minute. So that's what that sounds like. I'm going to leave the metronome on for just a second and play the first line, and so we can kind of get used to the tempo, and then I'll go ahead and turn the metronome off. All right, so first line, we start on our open D string. It sounds like this. Good. So with that part right there, again, this is slower than performance tempo, but a good starting point, and you're welcome to play it even slower. We need to make sure that we do the retake at the end of measure 2. So measure 2, and then. So really that quarter note is not very long. You're making it shorter to do the retake. Other than that, the bowing should be as it comes, and then just make sure that you are observing the staccato marks on the notes at the end of that line, and then we are also by default making the eighth notes a little bit separated in this one. All right, moving along. Measure 5, you have 4 measures rest, and then you're doing the high part of the melody. So at the measure 5, actually the second violins and the violas have the melody, and then first violins are going to echo the melody a little bit higher. So just don't forget your finger pattern on the E string. We do not have high second finger, we have low second finger. And you may use your open E string. You may want to use some fourth fingers for E when it allows you to avoid a string crossing, but by default you don't have to use fourth finger. So here we go. This is starting measure 9. And again, a little bit of separation between the notes, and make sure that when you get to those dotted notes, you're really subdividing in 16th notes. You should always have 16th notes running in your head. Now, measure 13, we play the next part of the melody, which sounds like this. some C naturals written in as accidental, so those are low second finger when you have the C natural. Measure 17, you repeat the same thing, exact same thing as the 4 measures you played at 13, but now it is piano rather than forte, so you're going to play it a little bit further away from the tip, from the frog of the bow, so play it closer to the tip. Softer, and make sure you don't slow down the tempo when you get softer. 21, you have 3 measures of rest, and then you play the last measure of the phrase. And that is going into the key change. Now 25, you have the first note arco with the bow, and then your pizzicato. Now, at the performance tempo, 104 or 107, you're probably not going to be able to play that arco note and then get the pizzicato note in time. So what you'll want to do in that situation is decide with your stand partner, one of you will skip the arco note and play the first pizzicato note, and then the other person will play the arco note and skip the first pizzicato note. So sometimes when there's a quick transition between bow and pluck, you need to sacrifice one of the notes, and if we all kind of decide who's going to sacrifice which one of them, we should be able to cover all of them within this section. So 25, we've got arco, and then this is low second finger. And make sure while you're plucking, you put your thumb on the corner of the fingerboard there to anchor it. And remember your finger patterns. We are in actually effectively C major for this spot. So we've got low second finger on the A string and also low second finger on the E string as we did before. Now notice we do have another key change going back to D major coming up. So, and an arco. So with the bow, and you should have enough time to make that transition. There's 2 beats of rest. So pick up to 29 is here. And 2 and 3, and 2 and 3, and 2 and 3. So there we are accompanying the melody, which is played by somebody else, and really important that you are counting those rests. Continuing along, here is measure 33. This is the second part of the melody. Again, same thing that you played at 13. So again, we have a quick transition between arco and pizz. You may have to sacrifice one of those notes when you're playing it up to tempo especially. Continuing at 37. 3 and 4 and. And so there, just make sure that you're keeping the bow right in the middle, especially when you're doing those quick bows, and try and get the motion as close to the fingers and the wrist as possible. So try not to use your whole arm to do the 16th notes. And then remember that we've got C naturals for the last couple of measures, so 40. Make sure you're playing low second finger there. When you have that C natural sign, and then we'll use a little bit more bow for those accented quarter notes so that you get a nice loud sound on those. Now let's go ahead and try it up to tempo with smart music. you're going to want to work on in this one, first of all, break the music into chunks and work on each section independently at a slower tempo, maybe around 80, maybe a little slower, maybe a little faster, until you really get each piece of the song. The finger patterns, we've got a lot of low second fingers on the A string put in either as accidentals or when you move into the C major at measure 25. And then, of course, the transitions between pizzicato and arco. It takes some time to get the coordination to make that switch really quickly. So don't get discouraged if you can't play both the pizzicato and the arco note that are right next to each other. That's really not the highest priority when we're playing an orchestra. And there certainly are some times in music where the transition is so quick that you can't necessarily do both of the notes back to back. So don't worry about that if you have to skip a note. And generally, if you are playing by yourself, it's the pizzicato note that you want to skip because that one's not going to be as loud or as prominent as the note that you play with the bow. I hope you enjoy playing Goin to Boston. Good luck and happy practicing.